Welcome, fellow synthesizer sickos. In tonight's live stream, we're going to be comparing Cherry Audio's brand new plugin, P-10, a recreation of the Prophet 10 from 1981, versus a real vintage hardware Prophet. This is a Prophet 600. The next synthesizer, Sequential Circuits, put out in 1982, has the exact same oscillator, slightly different filter, so it's a really good comparison to see how close the software sounds to the hardware. And we're going to start the stream off a little differently. We are going to do a blind test, and you guys are going to tell me which you think you're hearing, whether you're hearing the hardware or the software. So for the first time, I want to introduce the Furby of Deception. So if everybody wants to say hi to the Furby of Deception, now you guys can't see which of the synthesizers I'm playing. So without further ado, please drop in the chat or the comments whether you think the first synthesizer is the hardware or the software. Or let's do it this way. Drop whether A or B, A being the first synthesizer or B being the second synthesizer, is the hardware. So we'll start right now. All right, and swapping over, is this the hardware? So we're moving to B. So is this the hardware or the software? So what am I saying? B, B, A, B, B. Second is hardware. Second is software. Okay, well, we're going to do it one more time. And I'm going to swap halfway through so you guys have, and I'm not going to say anything in between because our little goldfish brains can't hold on to information that long when it comes to audio. So we're going to go directly from A to B. So this is A. All right, I'd be very curious to see. B, 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 A, B, B, had some distortion, a bit more aggression. B sounds weaker. Wait, I changed my mind. A is the hardware, B is the software. Both sound beautiful. A is the hardware. I'm using just a little bit of Valhalla Vintage Verb. Nick says A is the hardware. Hypothesis says A is the software. I played it the same way, so I'll play it one more time. So now I'm going to start with B and go to A. So again, we'll just make for fun, just so you guys do get it backwards this time. We'll start with B and go to A, which is the hardware. Without further ado, we can remove the Furby of Deception. If you guessed that A was the software, you are correct. B was the actual Prophet 600. So they can sound really close. I did notice as I was messing around with some things that they could start to go in different directions, but I was pretty shocked at how close you could get them. Let's see. So Venture says B is the software. It's a bit hard, but B was actually the hardware in this case. Yeah. Tone Pusher, welcome to the stream. One of my favorite YouTubers. I watch every one of Tone Pusher's videos. If you haven't subscribed to Tone Pusher yet, you must. Absolutely. But yeah, that sounds really good. So tonight we're going to start by just checking out some different presets for P-10. We could talk about the different keyboard modes, all of the stuff like that, and then we'll actually do a more in-depth comparison of the oscillators and filters, amplifiers and LFOs and stuff like that. Polymod is a big difference, I think, on this. Now, of course, the P-10 is a recreation of the Prophet 10, which is not the exact same synthesizer as the Prophet 600, so we wouldn't expect it to sound identical. However, the Prophet 10 and the Prophet 600 share the exact same oscillators, and they both use Curtis Electro Music chips. They use slightly different filter chips. I believe this is the filters integrated with the mixer on this, whereas the P-10 had separate chips. So it'll be interesting. This is about the best way to get into the vintage 2 VCO per voice game. You can buy one of these street price for about $1,200 right now. Might be a little bit more, might be a little bit less. The Prophet 10 right now from Cherry Audio is $59. Please hit the link in the description if you want to get it. And I think they have a deal right now where you can get any 3 of their synth plugins for $100, which is an awesome deal. So definitely a lot of fun to check out. So let's just go through some presets here. I'm going to go to... First off, we do have the Prophet 5 and Prophet 10 factory presets, so this is kind of cool. So if we go to like Unison Glide with Res, we can get some real beautiful sounds. Here's Filter Mod. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the reverb down just a bit. You really hear that use of the filter FM to give it that sort of sound. Let's see, descending pulse width mod. Tone Pusher can hear the difference between vintage synths and plugins on their phone. That's awesome. Pulse with echo. We could go, there's all sorts of fun stuff. There's ARPs in here. Some of these alternating ones are really cool. And you can see, I'll just show you. Beautiful, incredible effects. Love the sound of Cherry Audio's kind of grungier sound to some of their effects, which I really appreciate. If you want to see the effects, you can just go over to effects over here, and now the menu shifts, which is great. Another great thing about using this hardware is it's labeled the exact same way as the software, which is nice. Aquatic Borealis, welcome to the stream. How's it going, my friend? So this one really gives you that sense of like, wow, there's multiple different like things going on, and that's really what you're looking for. Let's check out some basses here. Dark pulse width modulation sounds good. Really ripping sort of sound. Nick Destruct, welcome, my friend. How's it going? Really great one. What are some other good ones that would be worth checking out? Stereo Riot bass. Little bit of that action in there. What are some other things? Sync bass. Not really a bass there, maybe. Pulse with mod bass. I should have learned the Terminator theme. It's not hard to play. Terminator 1 and 2 ahead of Blade Runner 1 and 2. That is a take. I definitely think Brad Fiddel's score for both of them are incredible, especially for me personally, Terminator 2. But of course, Vangelis has just like the greatest synth score of all time with Blade Runner. But Blade Runner as a movie is not a perfect movie for sure, even though we all love it. Let's check out some bells. Alternating. Whoa, what happened there? I think that required, I've got the 4x oversampling on. Wow, I haven't had a plugin cause any problems in a while. And again, that's using that alternating mode. We'll just use oversampling at 2. I'm surprised I'm getting any sort of stutters with that. I almost never do. I know something's going on with that. Celestial Celeste. Infinitely usable stuff. Brass Beauty. Let's try. Really good. That one's pretty damn. Yeah, some of the high end on that was pretty rough. Drawing Vapors. This is a much more beautiful, not ear shredding sort of sound. Really, really beautiful. Real False Prophet. Let's go ahead and check out my favorite category, which would be pads, right? That's what we want. Let's see. Classic brass pad. Very beautiful. I love that one. Lots of really useful ones here that I think... it's nice to have some bread and butter sounds, because a lot of plugins nowadays, they just have so many fucking LFOs that you just get lost. There's like 17 LFOs on this one voice, and they're doing all this stuff, and it's like, it's cool to hold down one note, but I want to be able to just, play some shit, right? Really nice stuff. I think that there's some good... Let's see, what else is good in here? What do you guys think? Curious about vocal pad. Let's try that one out. One thing, I don't know if any of you Cherry Audio men can tell me, is there a way to search? So like, I know James Terrace did, I'd love it if I could search James Terrace's name and pull up some stuff, because he did some of the sounds in this, I believe. Let's check out some plucks from a boy Dub Station, Chorus King. Oh yeah, this is giving me that Nat Life sort of sound. Could be very useful. So it depends. Why don't we get into that real quick? And this is probably like what people will be most interested in, I suppose. So I'm going to just go ahead and go to new here. And we've got 2 pages. We're in upper now, but I could swap to lower, right? And you'll notice that all of the LEDs have swapped to green, which is super useful to help. That's huge because with these types of plugins, these bitimbral type plugins, it's so easy to get lost. So can we solo? I want to see if we could do both at once. Is there a way to do both or copy it? I actually don't know if someone could do that. Let's see, utility, copy layers. Yes, we can. We can copy the upper layer to the lower layer. So we'll start with just normal single mode here. So when you go into single mode, we're only using the upper layer. Now, of course, the original Prophet 10, that would mean you're using like one 5-voice synthesizer, but because it's digital, we can use a whole lot more than that. Adam, welcome. How's it going, my friend? It's been a while. Crystal Love, how are you? Rumen Hippie, welcome to the stream. So let's make a sound real quick. Let's make a pluck. So we got to bring the cutoff down, but the envelope up. And we can... We'll bring the frequency. So we have like kind of a 5th thing going on, which might sound a little crazy. Let's go ahead and turn on the square wave for both, right? And increase the pulse width. I'm just giving you guys an example real quick. We'll go more in depth into the sound design, but so you can hear. And then we can assign the, polymod. So I want to increase to the filter. Oscillator B is now being routed to the filter. So what we've done here is created kind of an atonal type of a thing. Let's increase that even further. And just thin that out even further. That's exactly what I want. I want like a really tight sort of sound. Like it's almost an unusably tight sort of techno percussion thing. But when we go to the lower mode, so I'm going to put it in the double mode, and we're going to solo the lower layer. So you can see the little button there is flashing. And what that means is we've soloed the lower layer, right? And now we can actually go through and make like a cool sound. So for instance, now if we want to adjust the pulse width of oscillator A, is there a way to run that polymod to pulse width of A and B or just A? Interesting. It looks like it's just A. That might be like sort of like a feature from the original. So we could just turn oscillator B off and increase the filter here. Right? Just a little bit. I know it's weird, but like, do you see what I'm doing here? I'm creating this sort of, I always think of the Matrix 6, the opening preset's called MZ String, and it's just this beautiful, using a filter envelope to create this sort of sound. Increase that. Right. Just a very sort of beautiful sort of thing to that. Max Matson, welcome to the stream. Well, we're kind of getting into some of the polymod stuff here. If we applied this to frequency A, we'd get some craziness too. So now we can unsolo this, and now we've got two separate layers. And you'll notice, so we got this balance control here. And we could just bring in some of that other sound. So now we've really got a really interesting sort of really beautiful sort of sound. If I turn the reverb off here, we could then go into the effects, for instance. We could turn some distortion on. Oh, and it's per layer, which is interesting. So I'm going to turn that off. I was hoping to crush it all together. Let's add some chorus to the lower layer, though. We go to upper and add some chorus, too. But you get that, like, that little smearing, the smear effect. So we'll turn that off, but maybe we'll turn some distortion on. I think the big thing is going to be some delay. Jumping back, let's turn some delay on down here. Let's just go back in. Sounds... You guys hear that? What is that? If I mute my reverb? I wonder what that is. Is that the distortion? Turn the distortion off? Is it the tape? Oh, is the delay. Little feedback in there. So let's just jumping into the lower layer. Let's just bring the cutoff down a bit. Like ethnic sort of really cool tribal sort of sound to that first layer, and then the second one's just that gorgeous. I like it dark. So you still got that like attack. What I'm basically showing is that doing synthesis this way is sort of your LA synthesis type thing, where you've got two layers at once. Let's just go ahead and pull up a new initialized preset and put it into alternate mode. And in this example, we could do some kind of fun, like little pad. I got to be on upper layer. Like a really sweeping type of thing, right? Big sweeper. Sounds beautiful. We'll go to lower and solo the layer. And I need to be in double mode. And this case, we'll create like a pluck instead. We'll do some polymod to the filter too. Right, so that's a lower layer, this is the upper layer. If I put it into alternating mode, this is where we sort of get like an Oberheim 2-voice thing where we're gonna, each note will do the next. And turn solo off. That's critical here, right? Effects, I'd like to say. So you could, of course, go over into the effects and we could add, like, what would we want? Some reverb, right? Let's just kick it on both layers. Be interesting if we could, is there a setting, if anybody knows, where we could, yeah, let's just let's turn that off and let's just go to global. There we go. That's what I want. We just want to feed both of these into some reverb. We'll put it into hall. Of this channel for 5 months. I really appreciate it. Can I get a scum cheers in the chat? I'd just like to take a moment and say thank you to everybody who makes Wednesday nights here on YouTube the place to be. If you're a fellow synthesizer sicko like myself, I really appreciate you guys so much. Scum cheers to you all. Oh yeah, tonight I'm finding the path. Everybody knows I love a good Pathfinder. So I appreciate it, you guys. Thank you for that emoji spam. I appreciate it so much. So again, let's go back to just a default preset. Actually, I have one kind of set up. This is the preset I started with. So I'm going to go back. We're going to put it into single mode is perfect because the Prophet 600 is in single mode. And we're going to go deep now into the oscillators and then the filter. So we kind of heard how the synth works, how it sounds. I want to, hey, Gerald Daniel, welcome. Hey, Uncle Jerry, thank you for becoming a member. I really appreciate it. It's your guys' direct support that makes this channel possible. Keeps the light on in here. The very dim lights. So what we're going to do is go back and forth between the actual Prophet 600 and this. So let's just open the filter all the way, turn the resonance off, release, down, sustain. And then we'll jump over to the Prophet 600 and kind of do the same thing, right? Just make sure that I'm more or less filter all the way up. And let's just listen to a single sawtooth wave. So here is how a single sawtooth off the Prophet ripped my microphone off my head. How a single sawtooth on the Prophet 600 sounds. Let's jump over to Prophet 10 and see the difference. What are you guys hearing? I noticed something immediately. I'm going to play. Chords are often very useful for giving us an indicator here. One thing I want to mention to you is when you initialize your synthesizer, the oscillator is actually at 50% volume here. And I've maxed it out because on my Prophet 600, I like to max it out. What that could do is it could contribute some distortion to the sound. I don't know. It sounds pretty bright on Prophet 10. Jumping over to the 600. There is not as much high end that I'm hearing. What are you guys hearing? Yeah, I'm hearing more high end. That's the Prophet 600 we're hearing right now. On the P-10. What's interesting about that is the Prophet 600 is really bright sounding for a vintage synthesizer. It's by far the brightest vintage analog synth I have, with the maybe the Roland SH2, which is a mono synth, might be brighter. But it's a mono synth. It's not a full polysynth like this. Prophet 10, Prophet 600. Little darker. And so what we could do, there's actually, this is a legally modified Prophet 600, which you can actually limit how bright the filter gets to make it sound more vintage. Let's just go ahead and do that on Prophet 10. 600. Prophet 10, we got to bring it down further. Oh, envelope amount all the way down. Prophet 600. Prophet 10, a little bit more. Prophet 600, a little brighter. Let's bring it up to like 3K. And that's pretty close. Yeah, it could be that the original Prophet 5 sounds very bright, but what people said about the Prophet 600 is it sounded too bright. So to my ears, that would make me think that the P-10 might be a little overbright, but I don't have a Prophet 5 or a Prophet 10 to compare. Again, the oscillators are identical, but we have learned by comparing synthesizers on this channel that have the same parts, they don't always sound the same. So for instance, this synthesizer has the same filter as the Chroma Polaris behind me. Chroma Polaris is a very different sounding synth. And then this filter is a slightly different Curtis filter from the Matrix 6, but they sound almost identical. So yeah, I have filter tracking to full for both of them, just so you guys could see. Might be a little hard to see, but that is on there. We're listening to P-10, 600. Okay, so it's a little darker now, probably because of that filter tracking. Back to the 600. They're close. They're pretty close. Let's jump over to the square waves. Now, again, if there's differences here, they're not identical. I would be surprised if the Prophet 600 sounded identical to the P-10, but it is a good sort of comparison. And also, if you want to get into a vintage Sequential Circuits Prophet, or actually, now that I think about it, like even a Prophet 6 costs about twice what a vintage Prophet 600 costs. So, you know, it's not a bad way to get a real Prophet. If you want one, the vintage option's actually cheaper than the modern one, of course, cheaper than the Prophet 5. So right now we're listening to the 600. This is where I think we'll hear a big difference. P10. So the square wave on P10 is much more square. The square wave on the Prophet 600 is pretty sawtoothy in terms of harmonics. That's P10, by the way, we're listening to here. That's Prophet 600. Eternian, welcome to the stream. How's it going? Prophet 10. So really big difference there. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it just sounds more like a square wave on the software. Let's jump in to the sawtooth and square wave on at the same time. This is something you can't do on all synths, but you can on the Prophet 600 as well as on the P10. So this is the P10 we're listening to. And 600. Very different sort of sound. In fact, I'd be curious to see P10 with both wave shapes on. I think sounds more like the Prophet 600 square wave. Yeah, the Prophet 600 square wave sounds more like a mixed wave. I'll turn the master volume down here a bit. Back to the 600. Back to the P10. Back to the 600. One thing I noticed too, by the way, and I'm sure some of you synth snobs out there are already hearing it, is that there's more natural chorusing from the vintage hardware. Can you guys hear that over the P10 software? Pretty much those notes are all in tune. So that's just part of vintage synths, right? Is they're not perfectly in tune, which makes them sound a little lusher. Now, once we bring in oscillator B, oh, by the way, we can turn off all the wave shapes and we don't have anything on P10, but we do have a triangle wave on the Prophet 600. So let's hear how that sounds. This isn't a very pure triangle wave either. I really appreciate it, Eternian. Jumping over to the P10, we do have a triangle wave, but only on oscillator B. I'm assuming this is a quirk of the original P10. Oh, and it sounds identical, doesn't it? The volumes are all different, though. It was sounding really loud earlier. Jumping back to the Prophet 600. Actually, a slight higher end fizz there. Jumping back to P10. So this oscillator sounds identical to my ear. It's actually very, very identical. Venture, yes, this is a legally modified Prophet 600. So there's, you know, some of that too. We don't have any noise on this synthesizer, but we do have it on the P10. So let me just, that's there for sound design purposes. Could be cool for doing techno percussion, stuff like that. Yeah, the triangle waves, though, I think they nailed. Going back to the sawtooth wave, I'm surprised it's, you know, it's close, but that's P10. Jumping over to the Prophet 600. Yeah, it's kind of maxed out there, which I think sounds a little bit more vintage and analog, you know, but that's part of the interesting thing about these sounds. So I would just say if you're using the plugin and you want it to sound like vintage hardware, you might want to just watch the filter envelope amount and cutoff and maybe shave it off a little bit more than you think to be able to get it there. Let's go ahead and check out how the chorusing sounds. So we're going to just put on the sawtooth waves here on Prophet 10. we have this fine tune knob. What's interesting is all the way down is not the most in tune it could be. A little up is. Well, sometimes it was. It's got a nice sound to it. Yeah, plus 10 is like in perfect tune. Or close to perfect tune. It sounds very similar to a 600 there. Let's increase oscillator B. With this synth, it's pretty trivial to nail a pretty tight oscillator detuning. But because it has voltage controlled oscillators, even if you nail it pretty tight, here are you getting these interesting harmonics because it's so tightly tuned. But when you play a chord, it's fucking big. Really great. Jumping back to P-10, adjusting the fine tune to 10 semitones. Jumping back to the Prophet 600. There is a weight to the hardware that's not... It's a little different of a sound. And you do get, even with that tight tuning... Hans Volt, welcome to the stream, my friend. Jumping back to Prophet 10. Let's see how that sounds. One thing that I'll give them credit for is, you know, you do get this sort of voice card thing where not everything is detuned by the same amount. So you get different beating between the notes, and it does sound like a real vintage analog synth. It just, once you put it against the actual thing, you start to notice the way that, like, those vintage VCOs, the detune just sort of disappears and you just get this beautiful fizzy high end, and it's just glued in a certain way. Aquatic, I agree. I actually think I should have, because I do own the Arturia Prophet. 600. Harmonic Sonics, welcome. Yeah, Banana Rider 69. Yeah, it's there, but you do hear some differences. So let's go ahead and put like all the oscillators on with P-10, and then just we'll mirror that. We'll just do saw and square, and then saw, square, and triangle on the P-10, and just out of curiosity, let's see what this sounds like. So P-10. Lot of movement in that sound for the oscillators being tuned very tightly. A lot of weight there. Jumping over to Prophet 600. A lot darker of a sound. So in summary, if we're listening to just the oscillators themselves, I would say that this is less close than Atomica was to an actual polyvox. They nailed the oscillator section of the polyvox. Now, if we were to shoot this out versus a vintage Prophet 10, I bet the oscillators wouldn't sound exactly the same either. So with that in mind, keep that there in the back of your mind while you're listening to this. We aren't exactly comparing apples to apples here the way we were with the polyvox stream. So let's turn off oscillator B, and we're going to do just like a nice octave here. And we're going to compare that with P-10. So it sounds really close. We're listening to Prophet 10 here. And then jumping over. Billy Bart, welcome to the stream. How's it going? To Prophet 600. Actually brighter, which that is a thing with the synth. Sometimes vintage synths will be brighter in the low end than you'd think, and then they get darker in the high end. I don't know what causes that, actually. So let's do a nice filter sweep. So I'm going to bring the cutoff all the way down. And I'm going to apply some attack, decay, sustain, release to the sound. We'll just see what we get. Let's go with settings of 7 and 8, and then we'll do the same. If these settings aren't exactly the same, I would be surprised if they were. Actually, let's turn key tracking off on both of these. And we'll do about 7 and 8 on this as well, jumping over to P10. So we might need to move the cutoff up a bit. Synthmade, welcome to the stream. How's it going? Pretty similar. Seems like the envelope amount's still a little shy, which is actually surprising. Back to the 600. Yeah, sounds good. Okay, now let's go ahead and increase some resonance. So I'm going to go to about 2 o'clock on both of them. So just kind of dead 9 o'clock as far as clocks are concerned. And let's see. Jim, welcome to the stream. How's it going? So the Prophet 600. And I want you guys to tell me what you're hearing. So I'm going to be quiet. I'm just going to say the name of the synth. So 600. P10. $600. P10. What are you guys hearing? Shout it out in the chat. What do you guys hear the difference between these filters? Back to 600. Easily less resonance on the 600, so I'm going to increase that a bit. We're not losing nearly as much volume with the 600. P-10. The range on the filter is much less, which I'm surprised by, because I don't remember thinking the filter range was particularly huge on the 600 in the first place. But immediately, even at 2 here, it's a pretty small amount of resonance on the P10. We're getting way more throaty, vowely stuff that actually sounds really good on the Prophet 10 that we're not getting. So let's take it up to 50% on 600 and then try to match that with P10. I don't think it's worth worrying about the numbers because if I recall correctly, the Prophet 600 gets really aggressive with the resonance quickly. So we're listening to the 600 now. And again, tell me what you guys are hearing here. P10. $600. P10. $600. You know, actually, with this resonance at about, what is it, 65%? They actually sound pretty close, don't they? There's a nice, what I'm hearing is in the tail of the depth of the filter sweep, there's this wonderful sort of distorted character on the hardware that's really well emulated on the software. So listen to that. I think I've got one of the filter chips out of tune because there's one voice that seems to be going a little harder than the rest. Prophet 10. The way the filter's shape is a little interesting to me, and it's, again, it doesn't quite have the range. Prophet 600. Yeah, they sound pretty good. And then, of course, we could take them both into like extreme territory. I'm going to bring the volume way down. Oh, wrong thing. So this is the 600. Just do these like crazy. Going to the P10 with the resonance cranked. So in that case, the P10 can go like way beyond. So we're hearing basically just resonance on the Prophet 600. We actually still get more resonance compensation, which is where as you crank the resonance, more of the oscillators are pushed into the filter as well. So you still get more of that meat in there. at maximum resonance versus nothing wrong with that opinion, Hans. That's what we're here to do. I want to always make sure that I'm giving people a really good, like P-10 going through the preset sounds incredible. Most softwares are, most synthesizers are like that, whether it's hardware or software. But it's when you start digging into these little differences, because the filter is the most important part of how a synthesizer sounds. It's the thing that digital has the hardest reproducing. I think that Cherry Audio's Atomica really nailed it. It wasn't identical, but it sounded really good. I think in this case, the vintage hardware does sound better to my ears. It's just got a little bit more heat in there, a little bit more warmth, a little bit more low end, whereas as you crank the high end with the software, you really lose a lot. So this is P-10. Right, going to Prophet 600, resonance way down. But there is this like sort of nicer distorted character to it. But it's pretty close. If we bring in oscillator B on both of these, just out of curiosity, let's see. That is with the Prophet 600. Bring in P-10. Gotta play games with the master volume more. Sounds pretty ballsy there. Sounds really good. Prophet 600. You're just gonna get more range out of this filter for whatever reason. And again, it's probably because the Prophet 10 didn't have that range. I think that's more important than, as far as affecting the sound right now, than the resonance. The resonance is different though. Jumping over to P-10. So you need like that extra little bit, and then you've kind of lost it. That's close. 600. P-10. I mean, I think there we're in that range Dub Station was saying, where it's like, that's kind of, no one's gonna notice that in the actual mix, right? That to me just sounds pretty damn close to perfect. That's there. So I want to check out some more sounds. So let's go ahead, and I'm in P-10 right now. Let's go back to the Prophet 600, and I want to make a sound I like. We're going to make a, we're going to go 0, 5, 0, 8 on both the amplifier and the filter. It's crazy how quickly. How tight that is. We have to increase the decay quite a bit. So just like a really cool sort of pluck sound. Aquatic says, you know, it's crazy. You spend thousands on a hardware synth and you get mighty close on a cheap software synth. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that in terms of value, Cherry Audio is awesome. And I mean, look how beautiful the plugin looks. There's a lot to it that's really exciting about it. And I think for a lot of people, this is going to put the Prophet 5 in people's hands. But what's great about P10 is, unlike other software that will give you what an original Prophet 5 was. I mean, the Prophet 5's very simple synthesizer. Has some tricks up its sleeve with the polymod. But with this, using 2 layers, that's really the power of this, what you can do, and do stuff that you could never do, obviously, with a Prophet 600. I don't remember, does this have any sort of split mode? I feel like it might, but I could be deluding myself. That might have been one of the things they got rid of. Billy Bart says, couldn't live knob free. And I was talking to someone on the channel. I was like, I really need to do a MIDI learn where we just get some MIDI controllers out and MIDI learn stuff, because I do quite like using just generic MIDI controllers for this type of thing too. I never seem to do it in the live streams though. I don't know why. So we've got a great sound. Sounds great. Let's go to P10 and see if we can just emulate that. So these are set at like 7.5. Let's try that. Sustain all the way down. Sorry, that's release. We're going to put that to 3 o'clock. Sustain all the way down. Attack all the way down on both. And cut off all the way down. Envelope up all the way. And we need just sawtooths. And so we're just going to need that. So 600. The difference here of the envelope amount is huge, right? So it's very hard to match that. That difference in the envelope amount's pretty difficult, for sure. Synthonic says, to a certain degree, hardware versus software is now more about your workflow preference. Immediacy of buttons and sliders versus advantages of VSTs like cost, integration with DAW. For me, I still use VSTs a lot in my productions because I just got to go fast, you know? And it's also like, if I want to do filter automation over the course of 16 bars, right? It's easier to draw that in. And because if I record it, then I'm like kind of stuck with that. And if I go, oh, I think for the last course, I'm going to modulate keys, then I got to go re-record some stuff. So, you know, like it could be one of those things depending on how much I've sketched out before. Sometimes the software can really help there. That's 600. This is P10. It's very hard to... Pretty close now. Pretty close there. So we're listing the P10. And now what I want to involve is the polymod. So if I go to polymod here, we've got filter envelope can affect different things. Now we'll keep it real simple because on the Prophet 600, we've only got 2 destinations. We've got frequency A and the filter. On polymod, we've got control over frequency A, filter, the amplifier, and pulse width of oscillator A. And I believe on the Prophet 5, you can modulate pulse width of pulse width of oscillator A as well. But in this case, we'll just go to the filter and we're going to try to create sort of a dirty sound by routing the frequency of the oscillator to the filter. There we go. So it gets a lot brighter. We're going to do the exact same thing on the hardware. Now, I've got kind of in the same ballpark. Let's hear the difference in sound. That's the P-10, Prophet 600. Jumping back to P-10, let's just increase the amount a bit. Sounds pretty good. Let's go to the Prophet. The 6, of course, and increase the oscillator further. Actually, I just want to match this. I think it sounds pretty much perfect. The real difference is going to be when we increase the resonance. So I'm doing the wrong synthesizer. It's always a good sign. All right, let's see how that sounds over here. I'm at resonance 6, so let's just try that out. Just trying to match this. That's P-10, Prophet 600. Dialing the polymod back a bit. It can sound goddamn harsh on the 600 for sure. It's actually sounding a little smoother on the VST, which is nice. Versus the hardware. Really interesting chirpy sound we get on the hardware. Let's see if it sounds like that on the P-10. Pretty close. Let's increase the oscillator. Sounds pretty close on P-10, 600. It's just the resonance is just more ripping. Back to P-10. Back to 600. Up high. P-10. Lower the cutoff. Lower further. I actually think the 600's a little harsher, Eternian. Yeah, now it is sounding a little ripping, isn't it? Back to 600. P-10. Bringing the cutoff down a bit more. Polymod down. Yeah, it's definitely bringing the resonance down. Wow, that's really beautiful there. Back to the 600. P-10. It's close. Adjusting the wrong synthesizer again. We love that. My CPU usage right now is less than 1% for this plugin. If we bring it up to 4x, let's see how that impacts things. Now I seem to be peaking at 1.5%, so not that much of a difference. It sounds pretty close there. Back to the 600. Interaction of that resonance sounds so good on the hardware. It's just not quite the same. Okay, when I dial the resonance back, it sounds pretty good. I don't know. What do you guys think? I think it sounds pretty damn good. I think it sounds close. I think it sounds really close. That doesn't mean it's perfect. I think, you know, the vintage hardware does have some beauty to it that we're not exactly getting with the software. But overall, I think you can pretty much get the sound there without having any major issues. So what do you guys think? Is there anything else you guys would like? Hans vote. Hans is like, no way. If it ain't the vintage hardware, it ain't happening. I understand the feeling. I've got a lot behind me. That's just one wall behind me. More round on the hardware. Yeah, try playing a vintage synth with breath control for sure. Yeah. So 10,000 on a vintage synth. I would like to say I never would, but look at the one behind me. Unison mode. Banana Rider wants to hear about unison mode. If anybody else has something they want to hear, that's a thing as well. Hans, I'm just a little prince in the kingdom of Volt. That is for sure. Mr. Expander. God, you got the expander at the right time, my friend. They have gotten expensive recently. I want one. Okay, so is anybody... I don't know. We do have Unison detune on the 600. So let me just see if I can figure out how to do that real quick. a way to... Oh, unison mode. When I put it into unison mode, nothing's really happening. There we go. We just need to put it in. So let's go ahead and create like kind of a unison lead sound. Coming off of the hardware that I'm not getting as much of. Moving over to, let's turn polymod off. And then where is unison on this guy? If anybody sees it, yell it out in the chat. Unison mode. Comparing that with the 600. Back to Prophet 10. Back to the 600. I mean, the 600 is fucking giving it, isn't it? Yeah, it's just putting it to shame. It's pretty close. This is P-10 right now you're listening to. It's good. It's good. 600. It's close. Now, we do have control over unison detune here, so we could crank that up. Some real crazy synthy stuff, trancey stuff. We turn resonance down. Jumping in here. If we go, where is it? To tape 8, we've got detune, and now we can increase. So now we've increased the detune. This is a Glee mod thing. This isn't something you could do on the original hardware, but... Let's turn the 600 down a bit. I'm trying to hit the same targets here. That's P-10, back to 600. It's actually a little quieter. Actually does a pretty wicked super saw P-10. Back to the 600. I mean, I think it's pretty much there. I don't really hear a difference. Back to P-10. Back to 600. Back to P-10. Slightly more detuned. Back to 600. Back to P-10. Yeah, that's, to my ears, that's virtually indistinguishable. Ooh, there's a little drift knob. I didn't see this here. We got little drift knobs. If we want to put a little bit more of that vintage sound, we just crank up the drift here. Sound Author, welcome to the stream. How's it going? I would not, suck dick on the streets to buy a vintage hardware synth just to if you could get that same sound for the P-10. Obviously, there's differences between the hardware and the software in this case, or in certain sounds, but in this case, it is not that big of a difference. I think the P-10 sounds really good here. And, you gotta say there's so much going on with P-10 that you don't have with the 600, right? When you're comparing it apples to apples, yeah, there is a little bit more magic, a little bit more girth, shall we say, to the Prophet 600, which I'm surprised by, because out of my vintage synths, this is it's not, I think a lot of the longtime fans of the show will know, this is not my favorite vintage synth. It's just got like some things about it that irk me. And I always say hardware is fascinating because it's true with software too. But the moment something's not doing what you want it to with hardware, it's like the illusion is shattered. Software is like that if it crashes or something. So for me, this synth kind of snaps me out of it. And the sound, compared to almost any of the other vintage synths in the room, it's just not as, it doesn't have quite as much to it a lot of the time for me. But it actually sounds a little ballsier, a little more analog than the software, which I'm surprised by. Hypothesis says, P-10 is an awesome value that gets you close enough, especially since it's so hard to get a Prophet 10 or a 5. Whoring for Vintage Synths 101. Yeah, definitely check the Cherry Audio version first. Perturbator. I have, and I can't think of what song off the top of my head, but I've certainly listened to them back in the day. Okay, so I think that's a good enough point for us to sort of jump into talking about, do you think placement for the vintage hardware? So I'm going to drop that in the chat. Let me think about how to say this correctly. Let's start a poll. Do you feel that P-10 captures the magic of the Prophet 600? Or would you rather pay more for a more accurate emulation? Let's ask it that way. Oh, I have to cut this down a little. Let's try and say, would you rather pay more for a better, and let's cut that out. There we go. Here's the poll. All right. Does Prophet 10 capture the magic of the Prophet 600, or would you rather pay more for a more accurate emulation, right? So I think if I ask this question, most people who watch the stream most of the time will prefer the vintage hardware, and that just kind of is the nature of what it is to be a vintage synth snob, right? And which I'm proud to proclaim myself as. We love those vintage circuits. We love the hardware. We love the smell of the metal. We love touching the wood. But when it comes to actually making music, is it really doing that much more than the software? I think in some cases, yes. In some cases, no. And I'm going to be very interested to know what you guys think. Because for me, I think that comparing this with Atomica, and I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, so I apologize if I sound either too negative or whatever. I really appreciate Cherry Audio sending this over, and I want to always give my completely honest opinion. Cherry Audio didn't give me any money to make this video. I just, they're kind enough to send it over for me to review. I think that this one doesn't quite hit the sonic character for me enough for me to be like, oh, I could sell the Prophet 600. When I used Tal Fa for the first time, I was like, I could sell the Alpha Juno too, because Tal Fa nails the sound, like just in terms of sound, right? The final product is as good, in my opinion, with Tal Fa as the actual vintage hardware. When it comes to Cherry Audio's Atomica, I thought it captures the magic, but it's not identical, so I'm not going to sell the Polybox. With this one, I think it's a little shy of the magic. It's good for how much it is, $59 I think right now. It is very good. But I always recommend to people with any synthesizer purchase to buy something that you love the sound of. And I think on its own, I would love the sound of P-10. But because I am the most privileged person to have a vintage Prophet in the studio right now, and comparing them back to back, yeah, I can say, okay, there is a little bit of magic in there for me that I think isn't all the way there. SynthMade asks, which of the two questions are we answering? I would say it needs to pass both questions for you to say yes. You'd rather, I guess I wrote that very weirdly. Would you rather pay more for a better emulation is the negative. So if you'd rather pay more for a better emulation, you need to say no. So I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to change that. Yeah. So Pro 3, you know what I'll say about the Pro 3 is everybody who's got a Pro 3, Billy, they're like, it's the best synth that Dave Smith ever made. I would be really interested if they could make a Pro 12, and just take that mono and make it majestically huge. Or Six Voices would be fine. Yeah, Softtube makes really good emulations too, where I can't really hear the difference. And the thing is, if you're going to spend your money on a $59 plugin that you're eventually going to not use anymore when you buy a better emulation, then that's kind of $59 wasted. I'm not saying you're wasting your money if you buy P-10. I'm saying if a plugin's not good enough and it costs $59, and there's a better plugin out there for $120, I'm the type of guy who's going to say it's worth it to save up a little bit more to get the $120, right? There's these sorts of breakpoints when it comes to buying synthesizers. There are some synths, right? Like, Poly 800 kind of hits this where I'm like, you're almost better just saving up a little bit more to go from that $400 price point for a Poly 800 to the $650 price point of a DW8000. You're getting a lot more synth for $650 than you are for $400, depending on what the prices are. Having said that, the Poly 800 did really well on the legendary synthesizer test, and I think has its own sound that you're not going to regret owning. With VSTs, I think you should be a little more critical, because I think most of the people watching this stream have a computer full of VSTs they don't use, right? I hate to say it, that just is kind of the nature of what we've gotten ourselves into. So that's kind of where I'm at here. I'm going to end the poll, and 83, no joke, 83% of you said that the software captures the magic of the Prophet 600. So that's pretty awesome. That means that the vast majority, most of the time the chat doesn't agree that much on when I do polls on this channel, say that $59 is worth it. It captures the magic of the Prophet 600/Prophet 10, and it's worth getting. So obviously my vote would just be one vote in that big pool of people saying stuff. So I appreciate everybody who voted. Yeah, definitely very cool. Sean Johnson says, I'll probably never own a vintage Prophet. Mark Anderton, Vintage Synth, says, which one would you take on tour? And I would not take my vintage synths on tour, I don't think. I would probably get like an Arturia, like one of the nicer Arturia MIDI controllers and, you know, use VSTs or samples or something. Could get the legendary sample pack, links in the description, for doing something like that. That way, because if something happens to the synth, right, or the MIDI controller, you could just buy another one at whatever local music store is like down the street from where something happens, even if it's like a fixable thing with something like a Prophet 600, you've got to know someone who can fix it quickly. And if it's something like one of the Curtis chips died, you might be in real trouble. So definitely interesting. Eternian asks, Pro Voyager or Pro 3? I haven't played either. I would find it hard to believe that the Voyager can do more than the Pro 3, but I've been wrong before. I would get Synthsonic. I would get like a nice MIDI controller, not like a super tacky one. There are some nice ones out nowadays. Sean Johnson thinks about the Prophet VS. I too want a Prophet VS and an expander. Those are two synths I really do want. Yeah. Hans Volt, part of the heterodox opinion that the synth is better. Let's see. Banana Riders asks, what's your sequential of choice? I think the Prophet 600 is the best pain to pleasure ratio in terms of price to what you get of synthesizer. It's one of the best you can get as a vintage synth. Having said that, I do have my gripes with it, which I don't have with synths that cost a third as much. You can get a Prophet 600 for about $13.50, let's say. I think that's a fair price for one of them right now. They're cheaper this year than they were last year or the year before, especially. They used to hover closer to $2K. I would save up for a Chroma Polaris or even a Matrix 6, which doesn't have VCOs, but I think it's just an overall, there's more synth there. I love the sound of the Matrix 6. They sound, in terms of like doing filter sweeps and stuff like that, the Matrix 6 and the Prophet 600 are the two closest. They're closer than synths that have the exact same filter, like the Poly 6 and the SX240, or the Prophet 600 and the Chroma Polaris. So I would probably go Matrix 6, I guess. You can get those for around that same price point too. Yeah. But I would really love to have a Prophet VS for sure. That would be the one that I want more than anything. I just think they're great. And then, of course, the CS30 that Hans Volt had. So Hans has two of my three remaining white whales. So it's the Expander, the Prophet VS, and the Yamaha CS30, which is the black Darth Vader mono synth from the Yamaha CS line. I kind of want to get a JX10 too, just so I can compare that with the JX3P. I don't know. It's interesting though. Most people want the JX8P, which is the cheapest. You can get those for like $600. And I do think a JX, 8P is probably a better synth than the Prophet 12 in a lot of, or Prophet 6 in a lot of ways. Prophet 12, now that's a powerful one. So, yeah, Prophet 12, all-time great synth. I probably should get one. I do think it's like a classic synth. It just happens to be not as old as the other ones. So I happen to have another 12-voice hybrid analog synth from almost the same year. So it kind of covers that same territory. So I think with that, that's a good place to call it for tonight. I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys did too. I love doing these streams. I do one every Wednesday. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and like this video. It actually helps out a lot more than you realize. So if you haven't yet, just do that for me, please. It's completely free. If you want to become a member of the channel, you get 50% off all my vintage synth samples and drum machine samples, even my plugin, right? It's all 50% off, my preset library for the D50. So that's a cool thing to do too. $5 a month. You get all the fun emojis in the chat. Can I get some of the fun emojis in the chat? I appreciate it, guys. Yeah. M Audio makes a really badass MIDI controller. They're not messing around. I hope you guys have an awesome Thanksgiving. I hope you guys have an even better Black Friday deal, right, coming your way. Aquatic, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Oh, yeah, there they are. They're coming in. Next week, if everything goes according to plan, we're going to be checking out the Proteus 2500, which is another one of those like white whales of mine. I've been waiting to find one at a great price in a great condition. So it's like, what is it, a 3 or 4 tier rack mount synth. It's tall, and I love the Proteus MPS plus orchestral that I have. It's one of my favorite romplers, or it is my favorite rompler. So I'm really excited to see this like king of romplers. It came out, I think the 2000 came out in like 99, and the 2500 came out a year or two later. So it's on the verge of being vintage. The 2000, it is a Prophet 2000 with knobs, so you can kind of think of it almost as a vintage synth, I suppose. So thank you guys all for the positivity. I appreciate all of you so much. I can't tell you what it means, this little scum daddy down here in Florida, that you guys show up to this stream every week. It's changed my life. So I just want to say a huge thank you, and continue to be excellent, guys. I will see you in the next video.